If the production team and the worship team are working well together, I feel like the local church is practically unstoppable. There's so much amazingness that can come from that. And so I feel like the evil one will do what he can to stop that from happening.
Welcome to the Worship Ministry Training Podcast, a monthly podcast for worship leaders who are serious about growing in their craft and calling. My name is Alex, fellow worship leader. Super stoked you're here. And if you're a new listener, I'm going to encourage you to hit that subscribe button because every single month I'm going to give you helpful, practical guidance that you can immediately implement into your ministry. Hit that subscribe button and then go back through the past 9 years of episodes and binge listen your way to a healthier ministry. And if you're someone who is really serious about growing as a worship leader, I'm going to point you to the Worship Ministry Training Academy. What is the Academy? It's an online training platform that will give you everything you need to build a thriving worship ministry. You'll get 10 in-depth courses on topics like set building, team building, musical excellence, vocal technique, and more. You'll get live monthly training workshops on topics that are relevant to you. You'll get exclusive expert interviews with some of the best worship leaders in the world. You'll get done-for-you ministry admin systems and audition process, onboarding documents, team training materials, and even team discipleship materials. We will take care of you so you can focus on leading your team. If that sounds like something that would be of help to you, you can try the Worship Ministry Training Academy for just $1 by going to worshipministrytraining.com. Sign up today for your $1 trial, and I hope to see you inside of the Academy. All right, let's get into today's episode. Well, many churches have tech and worship teams that operate as two separate teams. There is very little cohesion, cooperation, and culture shared between the two. And in my opinion, that causes a lot of unnecessary drama and heartache and really isn't the best approach because if we think about it, both teams, the tech and the worship team, are trying to facilitate the same experience. They are trying to accomplish the same objective. And so we really have one purpose. So why not treat the two as one team, or at least two teams under one umbrella and vision? And I think the teams should be working in alignment together closely and in cooperation. Maybe that's not what our guest today will say, but I'm excited to hear from him. But we do have an incredible guest. His name is Todd Elliott. He is the founder of FILO, which is the largest or one of the largest church tech and production conferences in the country. And so I want to encourage all of you listening or watching this after the fact to send this, if you're a worship leader, send this to your tech director and listen to it or watch it together and then discuss it so that you can really figure out how you can better support each other in ministry, because we really want to be united. Jesus said they will know us by our love for one another, and he prayed a lot for our unity. So with all that said, let's welcome Todd to the podcast. Hello, Todd. Good to see you. How you doing?
Yeah, doing good. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited. Todd has his own podcast. So for you worship leaders who want to be more in tune with the technical side, I would encourage you to check out the FILO podcast. Is that what it's called, Todd?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Good guess.
So FILO, which is an awesome acronym. It stands for first in, last out, because the tech people really are. They're the first ones there. They're usually there before us lazy worship leaders roll in. and then they're the last ones out. They have to shut down the whole system. And so thank you, Todd, for first of all being an awesome tech director who has done that for many years, and now being a father of many other younger tech directors who are coming up. So I'd love to just start, Todd, by asking you, is there anything you would add to my little intro spiel about the teams really being one? Do you feel like that's in line with your heart, your vision, the way you see things working best?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting because I think it's very important that we operate as one team, that we, like you said, we're shooting for the same exact goal. I think the thing that's oftentimes difficult is that we're so different. The two, this is oversimplifying, but the two halves of the team, the people on the platform and the people that are back behind the scenes could not be more different personality-wise, the way they think, the things that matter to them. And so you put those two groups together, and instead of it feeling like we're working towards a common goal, it usually feels like we're just fighting each other and we don't trust each other. We sort of feel like the other group's out to get us, or always, how can we trip them up? As a tech person, having a band director show up with extra instruments that we didn't talk about in the production meeting, or adding a song at the last minute, or a lot of those things. Whereas I know on the worship side, it's like deadlines that feel arbitrary, lots of no's, just like at every turn, it feels like we're just kind of butting heads all the time. And so a lot of what we talk about at the FILO conference on our podcast is how do we make this better? I mean, this is not going away, the fact that we have to work together. And for whatever reason, in God's wisdom, he decided that these two very different groups of people needed to function together in order to make something happen. And so, like I said, it's not going away. So how do we maximize that relationship?
That reminds me a lot of marriage. It's like, wait a minute, we don't think the same, do we?
Yeah.
And like you said, for some reason, God decided that this is the best way to show his glory is by bringing completely different, basically species, women and men together and learn to love each other. And that's the same thing here where you have the raging extroverts and the raging introverts, not always, but together and work together, please. And it's funny because we have a couple Academy members typing in the comments saying that these topics make me think that Alex is reading my planning center emails, Ben said. And Joed said, yes, this is so relevant to me right now. So I think we're hitting on something. And even just the number of attendees live, not everyone usually makes it live, but I think this shows that we have a lot of people who are like, we need help in this area. So I want to start by maybe talking about the nightmare situation. If you don't want to be talking specifically about a church that you recall, maybe you can just create a collage of churches but basically, what is the worst, most unhealthy relationship that you've ever seen between a worship and a tech team? Does anything come to mind?
I mean, I think, honestly, this is sad what I'm about to say, is that if I think about it, pretty much every relationship that I can imagine has not been good. And there's only a few rare exceptions where the worship pastor and the tech person get along, they love each other, they're for each other, they trust each other, they get each other. I mean, I think, for the most part, it's more common that there's a disconnect in that relationship. And so, there isn't one that stands out. They all kind of stand out. And I think just when I think about my own experience, somewhere along the way, I realized that, okay, I wish somebody would come up to the soundboard and ask me how I'm doing. Or, nobody knows how hard it is in my situation, but nobody's asking. And somewhere, sitting there wishing that things were different, I thought, well, heck, I wonder if anybody else is feeling this way. Maybe I should go and ask somebody on stage how they're doing. And so I just made it a habit of, okay, if there's a bridge that needs to be built here, and no one's doing it, and I'm noticing it, then it's probably my responsibility. And so just realizing that, okay, if I want to feel trusted by someone and known by my counterpart, then they probably want to feel known and understood also. And so, I just made it my kind of, I don't know if it was my life mission, but just the way I started working then with my worship leader counterparts was, I'm going to make the first move. I'm going to start the conversation. I'm going to ask how your family's doing instead of waiting for someone else to do it. And I think as a tech person, it's real easy, and as an introvert, it's real easy to see people on the platform like they're the extroverts. They should be like, it's totally normal for them to come and start a conversation out of nowhere. But the reality is that, I mean, a lot of those people are introverts too, it turns out. And start, like, especially if you don't even know where to start the conversation. Here's this person up in the booth. They're totally different from me. I wouldn't even know where to begin. And so it's a scary move for anybody to make.
I love the idea of being a bridge builder and taking initiative and being the one to say, I will be the solution to this problem.
Yeah.
You hear a lot about that where people are like, I've been waiting for someone to disciple me for 10 years and the Lord never sent anyone. So I decided, well, I'm going to be that person for someone else. And what you're saying, and it is sad actually to think about, because often worship leaders can be in that worship pastor position. And then it's sad to think that pastor position isn't actually shepherding the person who's closest and most important and most vital to them. It's like loving your wife as yourself. You're doing yourself a favor, right? And the same thing with the worship pastors. It's like if you love and serve and bless and take interest in the tech person, your life will be better too. It's not just like you're not just doing it for no reason. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is another sad fact of the church of today is that I was talking to somebody who used to be kind of was a worship pastor at a church, but used to be on tour and, a name we would all recognize. And we were talking about just how hard it is for tech people at the local church to feel valued and understood. And the difference on tour is that you realize that you're selling more tickets if it sounds good. And so when you find a front of house engineer that is selling more tickets, we want to hang on to that person. We want to love that person. We want to take care of that person. And I think in the local church is a little bit of a disconnect because it has nothing to do with selling tickets. And it almost feels like the local church feels like we should have great sound, and we're entitled to it. But instead of, we have to cultivate it. We have to build the relationships. We have to build the trust. We have to take care of our people, whether they're staff people or volunteers. It's just not a foregone conclusion. It's just not automatic that, the tech team's going to be amazing. You have to cultivate something there.
Yeah. Yeah, people are not a commodity. They're not something to be utilized for your gain or your purpose. They are a precious soul in the sight of God, and they are to be loved simply for that. And then when people feel loved, then they want to give more, but it's like we get it so backwards. We're like, you got to do X, Y, Z. Now I'm going to go back in my mind and my memory banks and think about when I first came to my, big mega church. I had these high expectations for this really big thing to be excellent, and there were a lot of like fumbles and falters and failures on some of the production stuff, and it did frustrate me because I actually cared about the excellence more than the people executing the excellence.
Sure,
and it's like, honestly, and you probably feel this way too, Todd, and which is funny because you teach people how to do all the production excellently. But honestly, like in the grand scheme of things, who really cares? Like, who cares?
It's really interesting because I feel like as a technical person, I want to be a part of something that's being done with excellence. I don't want it to stink. And so I'm all for, let's shoot for excellence. Let's go for it. Let's make it amazing, but not at the expense of people. And I feel like it's real easy nowadays on social media to see what the big churches are doing, and it all feels automatic, like, oh man, their online mix sounds amazing, or why are their lights so much better than ours? And I mean, it's because there's a team, there's trust, there's a lot of battles that have been fought, relationally to get to that place. And it's not just flip a switch and suddenly we've got, great production. As you just were alluding to, it's not just a foregone conclusion that it's going to be great. It takes work.
Work, leadership, meetings, systems, rhythms, and many years. I always tell, I have a course in the academy called Musical Excellence, and I think one of the first lessons is about it is going to take you many years with many small wins that stack upon themselves, and the same thing is true for production as well.
Yeah, it's a long game, no doubt.
So, okay, two things that I want to ask. One is the relational side. How can worship leaders improve their relationship with their tech directors? And then after that, I want to ask you, what are some of the things that worship leaders do that drive tech directors crazy so that we can not do those things? And you kind of already alluded to some early, but so let's start with the relational one. What can worship leaders do to relationally improve that connection with their tech director?
Yeah, I think one of the things about a tech person that's, I think, universal is that we only ever get feedback when things are going poorly. So we only get noticed when some feedback happens, or light didn't come on, or push the wrong button, whatever. And so generally the only time we're having a conversation with the worship leader or the senior pastor or whoever is that something went wrong, and why did you do that? Why would you do that? And I think number one, the tech person generally knows there was a mistake, and so they don't need to get beat up about it. And so the other side of it is, it would be nice to be noticed when things are going well. And so the challenge in the relationship is that from the worship leader side, it's generally a negative conversation. And so the thing that I make a big point of doing is if we're going to have a debrief meeting or figure out what do we need to improve for the next service, which I think is super important. If we want to improve, we do have to talk about the things that did not go right or according to plan. But inside that meeting, I started implementing we're going to talk about things that I noticed, that we all noticed went well, that somebody else did. And so the thing that was so amazing to me was that when you started looking for good things happening, like I know I'm going to have to share a story later, so I'm going to start, in the service, I'm looking for something. It's amazing how different my perspective is of the service, of the people. And I think, if a production team's doing its job, it's invisible, it's transparent, it's not getting in the way. And so it is really hard to find the good. But I also feel like it's important to not just say, hey, great job, everybody, but to say, hey, I saw that we worked really hard in rehearsal on this, and I was a little nervous about it, and then you crushed it in the actual service. To be very specific about the things you're noticing. Because I think a generalization, the reason it doesn't help is because as a tech person, I kind of already feel like you don't even know what I do. And so to just get a general attaboy doesn't really doesn't tick any boxes for me. I mean, it's better than nothing for sure, but it's not, I don't feel seen or understood, or I'm not going to trust you a little bit more because of your general statement.
Yeah, it's just very vague. Good job.
Yeah, right.
But
yeah.
Hey, I noticed that transition went so well. Great
Right,
job
exactly.
on the timing. Great job leading the team. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I love the lighting on this exact moment in this song or whatever it is, but to be, kind of on the lookout for specific things that went well.
And, again, there's the selfish aspect to everything that we're saying, in the sense that if you tell someone what specifically you loved about what they did, they will repeat that more. So you're going to get more of what you love anyway. So
right.
Again, this is probably the wrong motivation for being kind, but it's just healthy relationships are just beneficial across the board. Yeah?
Well, and I think the part of the thing that happens there too is that I get to know what you like, and so then I'm going to do more of that, just like you said, and you're going to now trust me a little more to like make suggestions about, hey, I know you like this. What if we did that instead? That, now we're working together. We're actually collaborating. Which is that's kind of the goal.
Yeah, it's huge. And, relationally, I'm thinking too, I told Todd I just started this week at my new church. And the first thing I did before I started was not the first thing, but one of the first people that I called and connected with was the tech director. And he's an awesome guy. I'm super excited to work with him. But I just spent like an hour and a half on the phone talking to him about his past at the church, his family, just the things that frustrated him under the previous leader, and what he's hoping for me. So like an hour and a half phone call, and then yesterday or 2 days ago we spent probably another hour and a half together just walking through the bowels of the church, looking at all the old gear and just talking about like everything, And so I just think that time together is invaluable, but in a busy church, oftentimes we don't make the time for that. And that's something that I stink at in general, is like let's go out to lunch. But taking a walk with someone is healthy in many ways. And so maybe take a monthly walk with your tech director around the church area, for, an hour, and just talk and just pray with your tech directors. That's something
that is good.
Yeah, whenever I have a meeting with the tech director, I try to pray with them as well. I think that means a lot. So anything else you'd add on the relational building part?
Yeah, I would say, to your point, go for a walk, take someone out to lunch. I was always doing stuff like that. And I kind of had, I don't know that I told anybody at the time, but I used to just, I was just walking by your office and, I'll just pop in. Well, I on purpose, was just walking by and to see, just to have a casual conversation. So it's not a meeting. It's not, something with high intensity. It's just, hey, how's it going? How's your day been? You got a lot of meetings? Okay, great. Okay, see you at rehearsal. Just something super casual. Because the challenge in our relationship, we've already talked about a few, but one of the other challenges is that we're generally only ever interacting when it's like crunch time. And so the only version of you I know is the one in rehearsal. And the only version you know of me is in rehearsal. And you know what? The guy who goes out to lunch, is eating lunch, is just a slightly different version. And to be able to have a storehouse of experience with each other that has nothing to do with the crunch time will also help build the trust between you. Yeah, so I always say one of my favorite things about the FILO conference is when I hear about a group of people that they got the church van, they piled 10 people in it, they drove 8 hours, they're hanging out in the hotel lobby, they're going out to dinner. It's like summer camp for adults, the chance to have a shared experience that is outside of our normal day-to-day interactions, and how it's going to improve or just inform how we work together when it is crunch time.
Yeah, man, as you were talking, I had this idea, and I think I've done this once, is how much would it mean to your tech director if you invited them, and if they have a family, them and their family over to your house and had a dinner with your family that you cooked or your spouse cooked for? Like, that would mean so much, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, tell us some of the things that worship leaders do that are so annoying so that we can stop doing it. Go ahead and slap our wrist. You have the thousands of ears now listening to you, and you can slap them all at once.
Yeah, so I talked about it, just jokingly, showing up with extra instruments. I think in those days for me, I had a 24-channel soundboard, analog. And so, you add one more thing. I don't have any channels for that. And so it used to drive me straight up the wall. And I've learned since that, like, hey, the console's full. You tell me what, as the music guy, what do you want me to unplug, to make room for this extra instrument? Whereas before I would just take it as a personal affront. The reality is, like, we should share the responsibility of your last minute decision here. Anyway, that's one thing that I feel like I've grown from. But what it all boils down to for me is, I would love to know when we're walking in on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, what's plan A, as best as we know. And I think a lot of tech people want to nail down everything. They want to, like, tell me what it is, nail it to the ground, and we're going to leave it that way. And I would say that's maybe not the most healthy way of doing things. But they want to know all the details. And so as a worship leader, or the worship leaders that I've worked with, I notice they're real hesitant to give any information because they don't want it nailed down, And instead, for me, I just want to know, everything or you think when we walk into that space together, so that I can, instead of focusing all my energy on every moment wondering what's going to happen next, like, I have a general outline of where we're going, and then I'm ready to make the change as it's happening because I haven't wasted all my energy trying to figure out what we're doing in the first place. So I guess for me, that's the biggest thing I appreciate is, what's plan A? We're all walking in with plan A. And maybe we have some idea of what plan B could be, but I want to know what you know. I want to know what you've told the band. I want to know as much as I can so that I'm not playing catch up the whole morning. Yeah, so I think that for me, that's the thing. Don't be afraid of sharing everything you know with your tech person. And I'm going to be a little bit sarcastic here. I know that spend a lot of time, you want it to be spontaneous and spirit led and not over planned, and I get that. But the reality is, you spent hours, I'm assuming, behind the scenes in your office working out exactly, we're going to transition from this song to this song this way. I'm going to say these words between these two songs. At the bridge, I'm going to do this. You've worked it all out. And the reality of the American church today, or maybe it's worldwide, you can't do it. You can't do this stuff without technology. You're live streaming. You've got a room so big that you need a sound system. And if your audio engineer is missing all those, I'm going to talk here moments because you're afraid you're trying to be spontaneous. Yeah, you're not doing yourself any favors. You're not doing the production team any favors because they're feeling bad that they feel like they failed. And so, I would say just be open-handed with everything walking into rehearsal on the weekend.
Yeah. You're getting a lot of positive comments from the Academy members. They're like, that is so important. And Joe had said, including the tech team in the band emails feels like a good idea. I completely agree with you, Todd. I feel like one of the things I would add to what you shared is give them everything you know early enough in the week so that it doesn't crunch them right before service. Like, I think that's another thing that just drives, it's not fair. It's not fair for worship leaders to be like, oh, by the way, last minute, literally 5 minutes before service, we're changing this song, we're changing that song, we're changing this key, this person's going to lead it, not that person's going to lead it, she's going to open service, not. It's like, no, get ahead of the ball. And the Academy students know, like, I have a weekly task template for worship leaders, and it's like on Mondays you're building your set, you're putting your call to worship in Planning Center, you're doing everything early, you're sending out your set notes to your team and your production director on Monday so that everyone has time, not on Thursday afternoon when they're about to go home and they have to now crunch all their pro presenter stuff at the last minute. It's not fair, you know. So I'm slapping the worship leaders' wrists too. Come on, guys, we can do better.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of. There's a lot we can do during the week to get ready for the weekend, and I think a lot of it gets left to the weekend to figure out. And it's there's no reason that the stuff we can do on Wednesday we're doing Wednesdays instead of early Sunday morning. I used to get so frustrated as a tech person. You know, in the production meeting during the week, I want to know 100% of what's going to happen. Well, I mean, the reality is you can't know 100%. So, okay, what's the 80% we can know? And let's crush that. Let's get it done so that on the weekend, you know, there's 20% that we just don't know until we're in it. The 80% we figured out, it's ready, and now we're prepared for the 20% of unknown that could pop up.
Yeah. I have 3 quick questions left. Maybe not quick, but it depends on how much time you have. So we've talked about, like Joe Ed said, you know, emailing the tech team with the worship team, that would be a good idea. Or obviously using Planning Center effectively, efficiently would be a good idea, so that everyone can see what's going on. But what are the best practices for the worship and tech teams to be unified, including what do you do at rehearsal to be unified, at practice or whatever? And what do you do before service to be unified? What are some ways that we can make the tech team feel like they are part of the worship team or vice versa?
Yeah, that's good. I think a big part of feeling unified, again, we've talked a little bit about how we feel like very different, 2 very different groups of people, but we're working on the same thing. I think before rehearsal, before the weekend, before, you know, the talk through, before the service, before all of that the production team feels like we're making decisions for the benefit of all of us, not just what's best for the worship team or what's best for, you know, the service. That there are moments that we're saying the best thing for the service is for us to do what the production team's asking and not change that song, or, you know, whatever that we would be a part of the conversation about how are we going to accomplish this. Because I think it's real easy to just say, well, the pastor said we're changing the song, so we're just going to do it, instead of like, well, you know, we had this volunteer that spent all night, you know, building this prop, and now we're not going to use it, you know, or whatever. That, like, that's a part of the consideration of how we're making decisions. So with that said, I feel like it's very important to, you know, come together and talk through the service, you know, with everybody together. But I think more importantly, whoever's leading that there's some forethought into kind of what do we want to accomplish in that time. I think a lot of times what happens is we're just going through the motions. We're going to do this song, then we're going to do that song, then we're going to do this song, and then somebody's going to say something, and then that's it. Any questions? All right, let's get to it, which is useful. I mean, it gets us all on the same page information-wise, but what is the message about? How does that apply to us as a team? Maybe the tech director is leading that meeting. You know, you're sharing leadership. I think just this idea that we've been talking about is noticing something good that's happening, you know, for the platform people in those little meetings to say, hey, I noticed this camera operator, that I really loved that shot, you know, great job. And for the production team to say, man, you really destroyed that song in a good way. You know, just that the 2 teams are kind of noticing the good in each other instead of it just being, I mean, part of it is for a tech team, it's real easy is not the right word, but we can see each other on the production team, what's going well, and on the platform that, you know, the bass player does some amazing run or whatever, the band knows that. They can recognize that. But for the teams to kind of recognize it in each other, I think is really important. And I think that, how do I want to say this? I feel like if the production team and the worship team are working well together, I feel like the local church is practically unstoppable. There's so much amazingness that can come from that. And so I feel like the evil one will do what he can to stop that from happening. And so I'm afraid that it's always going to be hard. It's always going to be a challenge to bring those teams together. I think that the natural tendency is to split and become separate. And so somebody has to be about, okay, no, we're like, bring it back in. We're staying with this together. And that's not to minimize the fact that we are different, and maybe there are times that the platform people need to have some time together and the production team needs to have some time together. But then when we are together, we're being really intentional about, okay, how do we keep us together?
Right. Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about that part, I was thinking about the verse that says, endeavor to keep the unity of the bond of peace. So it takes work, endeavoring. And I love what you shared. And honestly, even though it sounds to you like something that everybody would do, I guarantee you half the people watching live right now, and then a bunch more who will watch afterwards, don't do a pre-service run-through meeting. So let's just start there, everybody. If you're not doing a pre-service run-through, do that. Get your planning center out on your phones and talk through it. But as you said, Todd, and I wholeheartedly agree, the infusion of vision and something spiritually beneficial to the team during that time is key, super key. That is where you're creating the culture, is in that moment. And I love the idea of sharing leadership. So, hey, tech director is going to run it this time. So that way they're seeing both leaders as equals, even if, on the org chart, they're not. The other thing I wrote down was potentially could be helpful. And we did this during COVID. Instead of having like the tech team hung out in the tech rooms and then the worship team hung out in the backstage worship area, it was like, no, we just had this one big shared space. Yeah. And we had our tech and our worship teams hanging out together in between services. And that was really helpful to unify it. And we put games in there and like whatever, not Monopoly, because that takes way too long. But you know what I mean?
Yeah. Uno is the favorite in-between service game to play. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about, and unless you were going to add on to that, what about culturally and spiritually? Are there habits that the teams can do together? I know at our church, before rehearsal started, whoever, like, it wasn't all of the tech team that was there. For some reason, we weren't as strict with them. But, like, the ones that were there would join us on stage for pre-rehearsal prayer time. But are there any things culturally or spiritually that worship and tech team leaders can do to spiritually unite their teams?
Yeah, I think just hearing you say that one thing, coming up on stage together, I think is so important. I think also coming back to the production booth for some of those would also be a good way to honor the production team in a way. But I think any time that we can infuse some vision and some strategy of like, why are we doing certain things into the meeting, instead of it just being about, here are the songs we're doing and okay, let's get to it. But okay, why did we pick these songs? Or a way to engage the brains of the people and the hearts, not just their hands, So we're just to get a task done. Yeah, okay, that's true. But if we can spend that time strategically, that the people you're capturing their hearts and their minds, that they become more carriers of the vision instead of just executors of the vision. And I think to have a worship leader and a production leader, for people to see that relationship really good, I think is important. The reality is that our time before rehearsal or the time before the service starts, like, it's time to get down to business. And so it's not like we have so much time, unless you want to start asking people to come earlier, which, maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes makes sense. But I was just thinking, I love the idea of praying for each other. Well, if you open up a time of prayer requests, but that could go on forever. And then, if you're cutting it off, it feels like you're devaluing people. And so, like, how can we strategically be about those things? And so, yeah, maybe some weeks we're praying for each other for 5 or 10 minutes during that time. Maybe somebody does a reading. We answer a couple questions in a group of 2 or 3 people. But just ways to I guess one thing, not make it the same thing every time, that some forethought's going into it. And yeah, to make it kind of a not miss moment for the team, that a lot of our team building happens here, and it's not just the leaders on autopilot, but it's us being strategic about how do we make ourselves one team. So
yeah, and I mean, thinking about like in between services, if you have long enough time, if for the Academy members, use the worship team devos and lead the production and worship team through that. Or like you said, pray for each other or read a psalm together in between services. Or potlucks, like why not include the tech team at your potluck at your house? Like why not do that? Unless your house is tiny, like it doesn't make any sense to not do that.
Yeah, we used to do spaghetti dinners on Saturday nights. So after the Saturday night service, back when churches were having Saturday night services, I would make spaghetti at my house and just everybody come on over, bring your kids and whatever. And some very special moments, totally unprogrammed, nothing other than we're just going to be together. So important. And so for me, when the worship leader, so this group that I'm talking to right now, so many of you are the key factor in this going well. And that doesn't diminish the fact that, okay, you need great volunteers and a good tech director who knows their stuff. And, all that's important. But for a thriving picture of heaven, it's on your shoulders for it to work. It's not, yes, the tech director has work to do and can work on stuff to make it better too. But if you don't make the move to honor and respect and love and shepherd, then it's never gonna be good. I think a lot of times, after a FILO conference is done, I'm like, oh, geez, I wish the worship leaders and the executive pastors were all in the room, and the senior pastors to be a part of this, because a lot of these people are just going to go back to their same situation without any hope of it getting better.
Yeah, and that's why I'm going to encourage the worship leaders listening to this to send this episode to your tech director or even listen in the same room at the same time. Yeah. And if you can involve your senior pastor. So hopefully this episode gets shared a lot because we really want to see that unity come to fruition. So Todd, this episode will go live about a month or two before the FILO conference. Tell our listeners, our viewers, how they can sign up for FILO. Tell us about FILO. Anything else you want to share about that?
Yeah, so FILO started, this is our 10th year, actually. We've been doing it for 10 years, which is hard to imagine. But the big idea for us is that we want to help tech people become more effective. And not just at the job they do at church, which is important, but also just as a human being. And so we try to create spaces for community and inspiration, as well as skill development. Because the goal is we want the local church to become more effective. So if the tech person is rocking it, then the church is going to be better at achieving their mission. And so the way we sort of design it is we have main sessions, we have worship, we have a message, to a room full of people that are typically working those events. And so we just say, hey, sit in your seat, receive. You don't have to worry about ProPresenter. You don't have to worry about the monitor mix. We've got it covered. We know they're gonna critique it. We know that that they have an opinion about it, but just try to put that to the side and just receive. And then we have a bunch of breakouts. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 80. That's maybe too many. 30 breakouts or so. They're all about skill development. So audio, video, lighting, leadership as a production person, advanced basics, all kinds of different breakouts just to help people do their tasks better. And all those are taught by people who are doing that job at their church. So somebody who's doing what you're doing and gets your world. I'm sure worship leaders feel this way, but tech people definitely no one else at this church gets me. They don't understand me. I'm a freak to everybody. Then you come to the FILO conference, you're like, these are my people. We're all, the same in a way. And so it's just fun to laugh at the same joke and get each other, on a level that generally doesn't happen. So,
yeah. So I would say, and I want you to tell us the website in a second. Yeah. I would tell the worship leaders listening or watching, if your church has budget, send your tech director to FILO and let that be a gesture of care and excitement and investment into them, so that they feel like, wow. And then, worship leader, be ready to listen when they come back and really hear them and take some of their idea and move forward with them.
Yeah, I would take it one step further, and I would go with them. I would buy a ticket for you and your tech director and use it as a chance to get a glimpse into their world and, again, be together and building memories that have nothing to do with kind of the pressure of the weekend. So anyway,
what's the website?
FILO.org is the website. And so you can see everything we have to offer there. So we have the conference, which is May 7th and 8th in Chicagoland area. We have cohorts, which are basically small groups for tech people. So those are usually made up of people from all over the world. And so those have been really great. We have a book that we published a couple years ago called I Love Jesus, but I Hate Christmas. And it's basically, how to navigate being a tech person in the local church. Anyway, yeah.
FILO.org, guys. Check it out. I'll put
yeah.
it in the description. And Todd, thank you for your investment into our community. Thank you
Certainly.
for your investment into the tech community. I'm looking forward to jumping into our Academy Q&A right now. So again, worship leaders, send this episode to your tech directors, listen to it with them, and have a great conversation. And email me. If you have a great conversation about it, email me, alex@worshipministrytraining.com. I would love to hear how it went. But let's jump into our live Academy Q&A. Todd, thank you for being here. People who are listening after the fact, God bless you. If you want to jump into the Academy, you can do that for just $1 for 15 days and get all the access to the courses and everything. But anyway, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope this episode encouraged you, helped you, and pushed you forward in your ministry. If it helped you, can you take a second and help us by sending it to just one person that you think needs to hear this? And if you're feeling extra nice, leave us a nice, shiny 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or like this video if you're watching it on YouTube. If you want to discuss this episode or ask questions, we do have a free section in our Academy where you can post comments and questions and chat with other worship leaders just like you, and also sample some of our courses. And you can go to worshipministrytraining.com/free to join us inside the free portion of the Academy. If you're looking for more, check out the Full Access Academy. You can get 15 days for just $1 to start and try things out. Again, you can try all of it for 15 days for just $1 by going to worshipministrytraining.com. Hope to see you inside the Academy, or else I'll see you next month for another helpful episode.